proximity-based access. I don't have to tell you how many applications this has. You're all seeing it every day when you're entering this building. Okay? So gate access control systems, contactless payment systems, network systems for Internet of Things, and many, many other things. It's everywhere now. However, it is vulnerable to so-called relay attacks. So let's go over this scenario. We have a D is an access control reader. And ideally, A would be near access control reader and the door would open. However, here is what can happen. This is a relay attack. Instead of original access control card, the attacker uses C, which is some kind of card emulator, okay, with a transmitter. And somewhere far away, there is another transmitter which transmits this signal from the emulator to a malicious reader. And so with the help of this, the attacker can now gain access to the protected area, even though the attacker is nowhere near. This is actually been happening to fancy cars. So BMW is very concerned about this. There have been documented attacks where the driver, the owner of the car, is having dinner in a restaurant, and the bad guys, with the help of exactly this kind of technology, gain access to his vehicle using his own key, using the owner's key, which is somewhere far away. Okay. I've seen many discussions of this, how to prevent it. So far, the prevention, so in fact, the talk here is about prevention. Short of this kind of prevention that I'm going to suggest, it's been suggested that if you really want to protect your car, you should put your fob the key fob into the freezer of your fridge, which prevents any signals reaching it. So the point of distance bounding protocols is to prevent most relay attacks. How do these protocols do that? They measure an upper bound on the possible distance of the control card or approver by measuring the round trip time of the signal. So the reader or the verifier will send typically a rapid exchange of challenge responses. And based on the policy of the verifier, it will let the card reader in. That is to say, you with your key fob into your BMW. All right. Okay. So there are many protocols by now, the distance bounding protocols. The first one was by Brands and Schaum. And the more recent one is Hancke-Kuhn distance bounding protocol. And just for illustration purposes, I wanted to talk about that one because it's an improved version of over Brands and Schaum. Okay? This protocol, and not just one protocol, but the entire family of protocol based on this construction, the protocol has the many parts. Of interest to us today is this first part that involves the rapid bit exchange between the verifier, or this RFID reader, and the prover, that is to say the RFID token. Okay? The interesting thing about this is that it involves a secret key and a hash function and a nonce. So let's go through this. So the verifier generates it. So they both agree So it's some part of some kind of infrastructure, right? When you buy a car, this thing is built into the key fob, okay? So they agree on the secret key K, and they agree on the pseudorandom hash function H. Okay? So the verifier generates a nonce, which is like, let's say, a random integer of a certain format, and calculates the hash of the key and NV, nonce NV, and splits the result into two equal parts. Okay, so this H is of even length, bit length. Okay, so the prover will do the same calculation, and will place the first part R0 and the second part R1 into two shift registers. Okay, now they're ready. Okay. So what verifier does is very quickly, extremely quickly, generate random bits C1 through CK. So K is the length of this hash is, let's say, 2K. Okay. So each R0 and R1 have K bits. Okay. So verifier quickly generates this random bits C1 through CK, and the prover responds. Okay, and the prover responds as follows. Let's go through this particular example. Okay, so let's say the verifier, without the general definition, let's just go through the example. Let's say the verifier generates this sequence of bits. So K is 4 here in this example. So 2K is 8, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0. Okay, so now what the prover is supposed to do is reads the 0, then it will take the first bit of the 0th of the left part. If it gets a 1, it will get the second bit of the right part. Okay, that's why the two first bits of the response are 1, 1. The third bit is 0, therefore it has to look at the left part of the third bit is 0. You get the idea. Okay? So this happens extremely quickly. Okay, so this prevents it's good at preventing relay attacks. However, this protocol itself is vulnerable to something called distance fraud, among other fraud types. And for the purposes of this lecture, I will concentrate on the distance fraud. So what is the distance fraud? The point is that a dishonest prover, or indeed an intruder, may manipulate the distance bound, which is computed by the verifier, in order for the intruder or dishonest prover to appear closer than it actually is. Okay? And there are several attack categories. I'm going to here in this lecture discuss two. The guessing ahead attacks, which have been observed in the analysis of the earlier protocol, Brandon shown, and our own in-between ticks attacks, which we have now published in the Journal of Computer Security. So the Hancke-Kuhn family of protocols is particularly vulnerable, and this is because they're using hash function to generate the shared response strings and having a very lightweight verification phase with no signatures. Okay, so there's a trade-off going on between trying to get these things done quickly and be safe. Okay, so first discussion of the guessing ahead attacks. Okay, so here we have the verifier. Remember, it's sending some bits and it's receiving some bits in response. Okay? Remember how it goes? The verifier sends CIs and sends CIs there and immediately gets back RICI back. Okay? So this is the world according to the verifier, and this is the world according to the prover. Okay, so prover is the guy who's trying to get in. Okay. So sending CI, responding R1, C1, R1, send C2, respond C2. Okay. So the idea of the attacker is to send out premature responses so that the round-trip time which verifier measures is reduced. And in that way, the prover would appear closer than it actually is. Okay? However, this is not so easy to do for the prover, okay? Because there is a tension. A tension is between 1 and 2, okay? So this is from the attacker's point of view, okay? So 1, the attacker must correctly guess the response. You don't know. I mean, you haven't yet trying to do this prematurely, right? So you're going to try to respond before you got it. So you have to guess what C1 is. So you guess it. And 2, appropriately time the response in order to avoid detection. If you're too eager, the attacker is too eager, he's going to send these responses too fast. And then the verifier is going to say, well, wait a minute, why am I getting this response? It shouldn't be here yet, okay? So then it's going to go and just close the door, that's it. You won't get it. Okay. So that's the guessing ahead attacks. Now, this new kind of attack that we have observed, not just against the Hancke-Kuhn protocol, but against basically any of the distance bounding protocols, is based on the discrepancy of the discrete nature of actions of the simple little device called verifier and the actual, which is discrete, and the actual continuous, or let's say dense time which exists in nature, okay? So this is why these are cyber-physical protocols. It's the dual nature of these protocols. They are cyber protocols. They involve computers, they involve digital tools, digital instruments on one hand. On the other hand, they live in the real physical universe, where they're subject to the laws of physics. Okay. Okay. So step function, okay, this represents the clock, verifier's clock. And, well, you know, this depends on how much you're willing to spend on your verifier. Okay? If you're willing to spend a lot of money, you're going to get a very powerful, very fine device, which will be much better detecting this kind of attacks than the usual verifiers out there. Okay? So the assumption here is, and this is a realistic assumption, that the verifier is such a simple device that can execute at most one programmable command per clock cycle. Okay? At most one programmable command per clock cycle. Okay? The second assumption, which is really what happens with these clocks, is that if you look at any of these cycles, you will see that for half of the cycle, the clock is down. And for the other half of the cycle, the clock is up. Okay? And this is how they work for simple devices. Okay? So here's what can happen. Let's say the verifier sends this challenge message, bit actually, CI, right? Out there. The prover gets it and responds. Now, what happens is that the verifier sends, let's say in this example, the verifier sends, and the bound that verifier sets to begin with, the perimeter is the radius, is 4. Okay, I'm going to let only those agents in, those actors, which are at the distance 4 or less from where I am. Okay? Take as many pictures as you want, but I've left the slides with Sergey, so hopefully he'll put them on the website here. So. Well, okay. All right. Yeah, take as many pictures as you want. Okay, So at, let's say, this point, the verifier sends out a challenge. Okay. And let's say it will come back here. Okay, so the actual round trip time here is really bigger than 4. Okay, it's 1 plus this bit here, this part here. Okay. However, I claim that the measured round trip time, measured by the verifier, is going to be 4. And therefore, the gate is going to open. And the guy who is a little bit further away, okay, it's not kilometers away, but a little bit further away, will get it. That is to say, the specification of the protocol is going to be violated. Okay. So why is this? Well, because in this clock cycle, the verifier has done what it could. It executed one command, namely to say, send the bit. It doesn't have the capability of doing anything else. What else does it have to do? Well, it has to record that this has been sent out. Okay? So the recording that the challenge bit has been sent out has to be done next time the clock wakes up. And it's going to be here. Okay? And it's because of this discrepancy that the attack happens. The actual round trip time is greater than 4, and the measured round trip time is 4. There's the same issue when it comes back, but okay, so just you already see what the issue is. Okay. Okay, so now the problem is the following that we're trying to tackle, is that little has been done so far to investigate formally and systematically the guessing ahead strategies and countermeasures. You can do it by manual analysis, and this is of course always very high level and typically always relies on some simplifying assumption to make it possible. Distance bounding systems are, as you saw, heavily probabilistic with very intricate timing and many different variables, so that manual analysis becomes too demanding and prone to error. So wouldn't it be great to automate it, or at least mechanize it? Of course, everybody wants us to have a push button. We don't have that, but we have a mechanized tool. Okay, so the proposed solution is the mechanized tool, which is based on the formal model, which itself is probabilistic rewriting for analyzing distance fraud attacks on the Hancke-Kuhn family of protocols. So our model is, number one, expressive. That is to say, it can capture the protocol's behavior faithfully on the one hand and succinctly on the other hand. The model involves time and probabilistic issues so that it can capture event timing, randomized behaviors, environment uncertainties, etc. Okay. It is generic, meaning that it captures a large variety of possible behaviors and attacker models. Very important that it's executable, which makes it possible to do prototyping and experimentation, which we did, as well as efficient formal analysis of quantitative properties. So this is what the calling card is of this project. We're going to have formal methods applied to analysis of quantitative properties, including probabilities. Okay. So number one thing that we did is to check that the results other people got by hand actually hold with our tool. And yes, we mechanically confirmed known results about simple guessing and also attacks in between ticks, which were previously shown manually. And then we are able to play with it. We generalize these results to various situations involving different levels of noise and different acceptance conditions. And then we can, using the tool, we can then define new attack strategies and then quantitatively evaluate their effectiveness under realistic assumptions involving noise. Okay, so a little bit about the model. The model is a probabilistic rewrite theory. There is a number of components that specify the protocol state as an equational subtheory, where RHK specifies the transitions of the protocol. Here we focus, in this talk, and in this work, we focus on the rapid bit exchange phase, which I showed at the very beginning. And the other two phases, we just use simulation for it. The other two phases of the Hancke-Kuhn protocol and the family of protocols, which I didn't discuss here. Okay. There is now a full specification in the rewriting environment mod with usage instruction. So Musab put that in there in the bit bucket. And you can download it, play with it, let me know how it goes. Okay? I mean, this is an actual tool that works. Okay, what is the protocol state? This is based on the representation of actors with asynchronous message passing in the rewriting logic. Uses dense time, or if you like, continuous time, to model physical timing of events. Okay, in other words, there has to be cyber physical protocols. They have to happen in the real world. Okay, the protocol state, is simply a configuration of the system, which is a finite multiset of actor objects and messages in transit. And there are two fundamental objects, as you saw, the verifier object and the prover object. Okay. Transitions of the protocol are specified by rewrite rules. There's not that many. There are about 10 or so rules in total, of which 6 are probabilistic, which correspond to actions taken by the verifier prover that we described in the early slides: initiating a round, setting a challenge, responding to a challenge, recording a timestamp, receiving a response. I should say, there is an associated paper to these slides, which was presented last October at the CPS SPC workshop, which is a satellite workshop of the ACM CCS meeting. Okay, so that's a big meeting. It takes place in October usually. ACM meeting for CCS, computer and communications and security. Okay, and this is one of the workshops there. Okay, so a big component of this tool is statistical model checking. Okay, so everybody knows about model checking. So basically exploration of state. But here we use statistical version of it, and we use the tool. This is one of the reasons why it's a great pleasure to have Musab Al-Turki on our team, is that he had built a statistical model checking tool and was able to apply it very, very successfully to this problem area. And he was able to connect it with mod, for which the symbolic rewriting tool, for which Carolyn Talcott, another one of our co-authors, is world. I guess it's okay to call her a worldwide guru about this. This tool can be used to perform randomized Monte Carlo simulations. The P-Vesta tool, this is Musab's tool, uses the simulations to statistically model check properties which use confidence interval estimation algorithms. The P-Vesta itself is completely public. It exists. You can download it and play with it, etc. Okay. Properties are specified, just a word about the language. Properties are specified in an expressive quantitative temporal logic, QuaTec. I'm not going to discuss the details, but there are several sections of the paper which you can get from my website, by the way, where the logic and the description logic is discussed in detail. The kind of properties that we are interested in are two fundamental security properties of the distance bounding protocol. Number one, false acceptance. What is that? This is when a prover or an attacker outside the allowed perimeter, let's say 4, is granted access. Okay? Then the false rejection. And this is the other security problem, is where an honest prover who is perfectly well within the bound, let's say 4, is denied access. So we're trying to prevent both things from happening, okay, not just one. If you were just trying to prevent false acceptance, then you would just expand the perimeter. Okay. The problem with that is that now you're going to have a bigger false rejection. So more honest provers within the bound are denied access. So that's not good either. Okay? So you yourself can't get into your BMW. Okay? Now, third property, which we already discussed, that's associated with the guessing ahead attacks, is attack detection. The verifier receives an unsolicited response too early, okay? And it's going to know that something wrong is going on. Okay, so we are going to talk about guessing attacks. There is a lot more material in the paper on simple guessing, guessing with multiple value challenge responses, etc. Here for this talk, I'm just going to concentrate on guessing ahead attacks. Okay? And I'm going to talk a little bit about our analysis of the in-between ticks attacks. Okay? And the really juicy part, which is what the tool makes it possible to do, is to mix these two attacks. I mean, if you do this by hand, you'll never succeed doing this, okay? But with the tool, you can just fiddle with the different dials, and now you can see what happens, actually, when there's a attacker who is using guessing ahead strategies and is also exploiting the attack in between ticks. Okay, so let's first concentrate on the pure guessing ahead attacks. Okay, so this attack is going to attack acceptance, which is based both on correctness of bits received in response and the calculated time bounds. Okay? So the protection in the Hancke-Kuhn protocol is dual, right? The double protection. So really what needs to happen is that the attacker somehow needs to synchronize with the verifier, okay, in order to avoid detection. And attacker must balance this tension that we already mentioned at the beginning of the talk of between sending out responses in advance in order to appear closer and avoiding detection if it sends them too far ahead of time. Okay. Now, what is verifier doing? So really what happens is that there's a processing delay, right, and between the rounds, and this processing delay is not constant. It's typically variable because it depends on the internal state of the verifier and hardware processing delays, etc. Okay, so this is again, how much money are you willing to spend? Are you willing to spend a lot of money, right? If this is something really, really like a bank or something like this, right? But you're just a regular car, maybe not so much. Okay, so here is another variable. Is the exact location of the verifier known or not? Okay, so we need to take this into consideration in our analysis. So this is another variable that the strategies depend on, okay? So if the exact location of the verifier is known, then the prover's own distance from the bound h is also known. Likewise, if the location of the verifier is unknown, then h is not known either, right? Because you don't know how far from the perimeter you are. Okay. Okay. So here is one of our contributions, is the taxonomy of strategies of the prover. Okay. And there's so leftmost column describes the attack strategies. The middle column describes the aims. And the rightmost column describes how the strategy is carried out. Okay, so let's go through this. You will see various graph representations of what happens in the tool of probabilities of success. And so they will be represented by different colors for each of these strategies, okay? So first of all, we have this Prescience strategy. So H, remember, is the prover's distance from the perimeter bound, okay? And T is the verifier's clock cycle period, okay? So, so the assumption here is that verifier's location is known exactly, okay? And so Prescience, knowing ahead of time, okay? In this attack strategy, what the prover is going to do is send guess ahead exactly 2H ahead of time, okay? Now we have a conservative strategy and the aggressive strategy, okay? So the conservative strategy, again, there are two kinds. Is the location known or is the location unknown? If location is known, this is conservative. So what I'm trying to do is stay undetected. Okay, I'm not so much trying to succeed, or I am, but my main task is to stay undetected. Okay, so here's avoid detection with uncertainty in verifier, the exact location. It's somewhere in there, but okay. So I'm the attacker. I'm going to choose my responses uniformly and random from the interval H to H. Okay, so this is in contrast this where I'm sitting way in one extremity of this interval, okay? A conservative with no knowledge of verifier's location, so what am I going to use? I don't know H, okay? So my strategy is going to be to choose my premature responses uniformly at random from the interval T quarter, T half, where T is the verifier's clock cycle period. Okay, so this is the conservative strategy. Aggressive strategy doesn't care about detection. It really cares about getting in there, okay? Just gotta be very aggressive. Maybe I'll detect it, but before that, I already get it, okay? So aggressive, if you know approximately where the verifier is, then I'm gonna be choosing uniformly at random. See, up there was H2H. Here I'm gonna do 3H half to 5H half. Okay. And similarly, AG, which is a counterpart of CN, meet the time bound with no knowledge, and so I'm going to choose uniformly at random from T half T. Okay. T is the clock cycle period of the verifier. Okay, so unfortunately I have to ask you to remember these because I'm going to be representing them on the graphs. Okay. Okay. So this is just a simple guessing ahead strategy with almost no noise. Okay, so the vertical axis is the probability of false acceptance. Let's look at the false acceptance chart first, okay? Probability of false acceptance. And on the horizontal axis is the number of rounds, right? So what's happening if, you're allowed to have more and more rounds? You're hoping that the protocol will behave better and better, right? That's the intuition. They will behave better and better with the increased number of rounds, okay? And I think this is a realistic bounds between 0 and 50. For more than 50, I think it's not implemented, okay? It's theoretically interesting, but it's not. So here's what happens, okay? So let's look at this aggressive strategy. Okay, so false acceptance actually falls down. Okay, similarly, so the pink one is conservative strategy. It's a little less. The false acceptance is a little higher. Okay, then we have the red and the blue, conservative and aggressive, assuming H is known within a certain interval, okay? So the red and you see, that's interesting kind of behavior. I think that the way to explain the waviness of these graphs is because of the discrete nature of the clock behavior of the verifier. Okay, the clock is up, then it goes off. Okay, then it's up again, and it goes off. Okay, so what you see that here. Okay? So the worst one is the gray one. This is the Prescience Strategy, when you kind of know H, and you just there at the boundary 2H of the interval, and you're just sending it to it. And so you have a pretty good chance of getting detected. And it's getting worse. Of pretty good chance at false acceptance, meaning you get in where you're nowhere near, okay? So probability half is here, and even 0.6 is hit, even higher than 0.66. Okay, that's what happens. This is what the tool shows. Okay, so now a different issue is the attack detection. And there, you know, the conservative is good. Okay. Aggressive is getting detected with more and more rounds. So the number of rounds is a good protection, okay, against attacks as from the detection point of view. And the very aggressive one is the worst, of course. And so this one is as you would expect it, okay? This one is a little bit of a surprise. Okay, for the, I think I will not, in the interest of time, I will not talk so much about the attack in between ticks. These are actually just confirmations of our theorems from that Journal of Computer Security paper, where this is just a fixed round. There's no repeated challenge response bit. And it's an interesting theorem that what we showed that for H, for the little band around the perimeter of a half, the probability of success is really high. It's a half, okay? And so for a little band around it, okay? And then it just linearly falls down as you move away from this little magic band, okay? That's a theorem. In that older paper, we also investigated what happens if you increase the number of rounds. So they have multiple rounds as a suggested protection against attacks in between ticks, okay? And then the issue is, what is the policy of acceptance of the verifier? Because he's going to get many different responses, and it could use a simple majority decision, okay? Or it could use a large majority decision, okay? So let's say this is 50%, this is, let's say, 67%, okay? Or you could just look at all of them, and if there's at least one wrong one, you just don't get it in. So this is what's represented here. Again, with a small majority, there is this very strange wavy behavior, which is due to the discrete nature of the clock cycle. And it's actually very unsatisfactory, okay? So for a simple majority, don't do that, okay? You will get in very likely, okay? So even, again, above a half, a lot, okay? For a large majority, as expected, it will be detected, okay? If the verifier is requiring a large majority of correct responses, it quickly goes down. All right, so this is, I'm really concentrating right now on false acceptance. You can look in the paper what happens to the calculations for false rejection. Okay, now this is my big prize, okay? Is because I can now play with this tool and I can program in both attacks at the same time. Okay, good luck doing this by hand, okay? Okay, and so here is what happens. Okay, so this is the guessing ahead attacker who uses that chart of strategies. And it's also trying to exploit the nature, the discrete nature of the verifier, and hence it's trying to exploit the attack in between ticks. Okay, so Interesting. So there are, let's say, things that are expected. So the aggressive one is going to fall down with the increased number of rounds. Similarly, the conservative one. Okay, so this is in both these two, the attacker doesn't know where the verifier is. Now, if the attacker knows where the verifier is, then it can use h, okay, the distance, its own distance from the perimeter. Now, here's what happens. You have the aggressive one, the blue one, okay, and it goes down a little bit, but it kind of hovers uncomfortably around 0.4, which is really not good, okay? So the probability of false acceptance 0.4 is kind of high, okay? And now the real disaster happens surprisingly, with the conservative strategy, okay? In the case where the H is known. Okay, so when we looked at this, we said, wow, okay, so now this tool has really performed for us, okay? And I think this is why we got into the conference, okay? So it's just really outrageous behavior, okay? And increasing the number of rounds won't help you, okay? It kind of oscillates, but it's sort of in inches to go. There are too many cases where it's even above 0.6 probability of false acceptance, okay? So at least we now know, okay? So what did we do? We developed a model based on probabilistic rewriting logic and statistical model checking in order to formally analyze the Hancke-Kuhn family of protocols. This model is expressive and generic and enables automated, mechanized verification of properties, the interesting security properties, under various settings, including the ones that are not so easily analyzable by manual analysis. Okay? We developed a new taxonomy. Everyone was interested in this. A new taxonomy of guessing ahead attacker strategies and their evaluation using the tool. Okay, so what are we doing now? And in the future, we would like to consider other scenarios, such as, for instance, one that the verifier's delays are not necessarily uniformly distributed. Okay. A model other verifier countermeasures, for instance, aggressive randomization, verifier, of challenge timings or observing noticeable variations in measured time of flight, right? So the very appealing possibility here is to decrease voltage for the verifier in some kind of randomized way so that the challenges are sent out in a very random fashion, okay? Not what they are, but when they are sent is very random. And that intuitively should make life very difficult for the attacker, okay? So this was all about this so-called distance fraud, but there are many other types of fraud known, so we would like to model them. Okay, symbolic analysis that we'd like to do through probabilistic extensions to timed multiset rewriting. So we have a time multiset rewriting model. It would be good to define exact probabilistic extension to it, get the complexity results for various theoretical problems, etc. Okay? Спасибо.
Спасибо. Есть ли вопросы?
I think so.
Please.
Yes. Firstly, can you say something about the simulation environment and some maybe technical details about the simulation logic? What about the uniform distribution, yes?
Mm-hmm.
And what if I simply put another generator of random values
Mm-hmm.
and try to do similar pictures?
Yes, this is possible in our tool. I'm not reporting it here, but I'm pretty sure that in Musab's tool, PVesta, you can do things like that. So we did, we did.
The next result, yeah?
Well, I mean, either next result or part of the journal version of the paper or something like that. Yeah, yeah. By the way, take a look at the GitHub, and you can probably play with this.
What
Yeah.
about the real low voltage connectors like micro NFS and so on? Do you think something about the trend of development of such low voltage connectors?
I've been trying to find, I would love to know. I've been trying to find out, first of all, in my department, who is somebody who really knows the clocks in these devices, okay? And I didn't have any success. Then whenever I go to a conference, then I try to look for somebody who really knows what's going on. I haven't yet been able to find somebody, okay? So this is an interesting cultural issue, okay? Is there are engineers out there who know everything about these clocks, okay? So for instance, here's a simple question that nobody has been able to answer to us. Every answer we are giving right now is a theoretical model of people like ourselves. So the question is, and in fact it is on that picture, which is on the Colloquium announcement also, okay, is what happens if the signal comes back when the clock is down? What is the actually, implemented system response to this? We have not been able to find a person who would know the answer. So it's interesting that our tools are becoming so fine. They're leading us to ask implementation questions of the nature which are not known to us. And we need to find somebody who will know.
And so it is interesting for you if I connect you with some developers of the hardware.
It's very interesting, yes? 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 I'm going around every conference I go to, it says, who can tell me something about clocks? Okay, so, do you know how this works? Yeah. So, yes?
So we have just seen the results of some modeling with those probabilistic.
Yes.
And the rates that were shown look similar to false positive rates in
Yes.
machine learning.
Oh.
A very, maybe
Okay.
very straightforward approach. Let's machine learn everything.
Yes.
So how is it?
Yes.
Can
Yes.
we model it without the intrinsic
You should.
log?
You should. Take this work, please, and do it yourself or apply it. I'm all in favor of it, okay? Let me know what's happening, and my team and I would love to talk to you, okay? Okay, so this came up in connection with some other work that I talked about here in December, okay? About the verification of time-distributed systems of drones, okay? Is that what if there is some kind of machine learning involved in the systems? Can you build that into the attacker's response, okay? And I think that's a great way to explore, okay? That's another dimension. The machine learning of the attacker is another dimension.
Yeah, but
Okay,
it's
so,
very similar to the current states of the art here in the debugging of the network system by the email machine learning.
very interesting.
It's really very similar as simulation modeling.
I see. Can I ask you for a favor? Can you write down that question and email it to me, okay? And then we'll get going, okay? So I'm really glad I gave this talk. Right. Yeah. I myself have nothing against machine learning, but, the world is still divided into two camps, right? So the rule-based analysis like this and machine learning. But why not? If you're looking at, I'm really glad that we got these graphs, because now you can see, hey, wait a minute, these are the graphs that are also up here. What's going on?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
very good black box with some input-output. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Maybe
I see. So you really want to use machine learning to get into the other guy's BMW. I get it. But anyway, that would be really good.
One of
Yeah.
our aspirants
Yeah.
from Sergei Olegovich.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yes.
One more question,
Yeah.
which is
Who cares?
minorly related. One of my former collaborators asked me, will mathematicians should develop some protocols for those who are participants of online trading?
Yes.
Because they need a sort of trust mechanism to each other. And in Russian, I would say how to solve the dilemma утром деньги, вечером стулья, or vice versa. So, do you know any such attempts, maybe in your team, to...
We are not doing it now. I did some work on contract signing a long time ago, which has some bearing on the question that you're asking. But I think there's lots of work on online trading protocols. Yeah, I'm not doing it, but yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Very good questions. Excellent questions.
Okay. Thank you very much. It looks like
Thank
we
you.
have nice plans.
Yeah, we have. Yes, something will happen. Yes, okay, we hope. Yes, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Спасибо.